Hello all and welcome to Stingray Tom's Florida. Today I thought I'd do something a little different. Think of it as an unboxing. This package contains about 140 documents, mostly brochures and postcards. I thought I'd go through them the way I would normally do it when I get a package like this in the mail. Now the first thing to say is that I actually don't get packages with this many brochures or documents in them at a time typically. My collection is large enough that I don't buy large lots of documents like this, but I saw this online and I thought this might be really good for this type of video. So we're going to go through each item very quickly, one at a time, tell you a little bit about them, and sort of give you an idea of what I pick and use in my archive. So I got this from a very nice person on eBay. Got a decent price, I think, although we'll see what happens when I open it up. So we'll see what we have in them. Some fluff. Looks like postcards. Something big. There you go. And looks like brochures. They're all nicely wrapped up. I'm going to take them all out of the bags first. That way we have them all available. And then the postcards. Not too bad though. So that's what we have. We have a nice stack of postcards here, and there's a couple interesting postcard books on the top. I'll mention those. Then we have, looks like we have a couple Cypress Gardens mini brochures. Looks like we have a couple larger things. We have a massive postcard, it looks like. A not so massive postcard, still very big though. And looks like a souvenir booklet. Then we have all these documents. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of them here. So the first thing we have here is this business card from the Sandman Motel in St. Petersburg. I don't normally keep business cards like this because they say very little, and also it's a motel, there's thousands of them. Then we have these two mini brochures, one with a folded over edge, no big deal, but they look to be identical. Let me open one up for you. This is from Cypress Gardens, of course. I think I have this brochure, or at least I have a similar one. And that's one of the things I end up having to do at the end of all these openings is go through my collection and see what I have that is the same or similar. If it's similar, if there's some difference to it, I usually keep it. On to the postcards. Now this is what I call a postcard book or booklet. It's actually not made up of real postcards in that it's basically just all one printed thing. You wouldn't take these apart, they're double-sided. Obviously you can't send a double-sided postcard easily, but most of the photos in them are from postcards, so that's why they call them postcard booklets. These are pretty uncommon to be made anymore, but they were certainly common back in the day. This one is from Marineland of Florida, and it is probably dated, it can be dated to the late 50s or early 60s, I would guess. Then we have Sunken Gardens, another one of these postcard books, and this actually has a date on it, 1967. This is from Sunken Gardens in St. Petersburg, a attraction that opened back in 1935, and it's still open. It's owned by the city of St. Petersburg at this point. So I wanted to show you the postcards. I decided that it'd be best if I sort of zoom in a bit on them, and hopefully they'll get better focus. The first one seemed to be from Marineland. This is a dog getting pulled on a surfboard by dolphins. Pilot whale getting its teeth brushed. Some more dolphins. High jumping dolphins. This isn't that old. It's not dated, but I can tell at a certain point in the 50s, Marineland was changed its name from Marine Studios to Marineland, because initially Marine Studios was developed as a underwater movie making company more than an attraction. And this goes back to those days. So it's an early photo on a later postcard. You can see even on this one, it has the Marine Studios logo on the box there. Then we have Marty's Restaurant in the nation's oldest city, so that would be a St. Augustine thing. Once again, I don't tend to keep postcards of things like restaurants and hotels and motels unless they're particularly significant. This is Courtesy Court in St. Augustine. And then looks like we moved from Marineland to St. Augustine, because the next one is actually from Potter's Wax Museum. And another one from Potter's should be Cleopatra, Mark Antony, and Julius Caesar. Another one from Potter's. And then we have a photo of the original Potter's location in St. Augustine. Then we have Ripley's Believe It or Not. This is a statue in there that shows a man that had basically 4 irises instead of 2. One of the weird things that Ripley's has. And the entrance to Ripley's, and a 2-headed calf that would be on display there. Now we're off to the St. Augustine Alligator Farm. They used to actually slide alligators down this slide. It was something that the alligators, I'm sure, did not care for. More at the St. Augustine Alligator Farm, where you used to be able to cross over the bridge into the area with the gators. Some gator wrestling, something thankfully is really not done much anymore. More gators. More gators. And a general one from St. Augustine. This one shows the Castillo de San Marcos, and I believe the oldest schoolhouse, what now is today is the oldest wooden schoolhouse, because it's not the oldest schoolhouse in the United States. Then we have St. Augustine Beach and its pier. The interior of the Castillo de San Marcos. The exterior of the Castillo de San Marcos. The Great Cross at the Nombre de Dios Mission. The main church at the Nombre de Dios Mission. This is an older attraction that's no longer around, called the Old Grist Mill. We have the Flagler Memorial Church in St. Augustine, built in honor of his daughter. And we have the Castillo in the background with one of the recreated fence lines or wall lines of St. Augustine. Then we have the La Leche Shrine at the missions. This is St. Augustine. This is downtown St. Augustine. That's the main square there. And the cathedral would be right in the back behind this building. And you have the town walls. And the Castillo again. Now a bunch of these I already have, some of them I don't have, so I'll be able to go through my collection and see what I have, and the rest of them I'll probably just get rid of. And then we have the oldest house, St. Augustine. And then we're off to St. Petersburg apparently. This is the Sandman Hotel, the same one I believe from the business card. So let's move those out of the way for the moment. And then we've got the entrance to Sunken Gardens. And then jumping around a little bit, I guess, we're at Florida's Cypress Gardens. There we go. Cypress Gardens down in Polk County. And this is Sunken Gardens. So remember, I just pulled these out. I didn't organize them or anything. More of Sunken Gardens. Sunken Gardens. Sunken Gardens. And at one point, Sunken Gardens also had a sort of wax museum that was dedicated to the life of Christ. So this is one of the images, or one of the figures there of Christ. Here's another one of him. And I believe that is the Christmas scene of Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus. And some of the disciples at the Last Supper. Crucifixion and resurrection. Then we have the old Swiss house at Busch Gardens. And also Busch Gardens, what I like to joke is the escalator to nowhere. It actually just goes to the top of the brewery, and then you just take a tour going down through the levels of the brewery. But it's always kind of funny. It reminds me of the Simpsons episode where they have the escalator to nowhere. And you have the, I can't remember what this is called. This is in their safari. It's the Sky Rail. No longer there. Used to be a really nice thing, but it was having a lot of problems. They didn't keep it in repair. Couple rhino. Part of the gardens of Busch Gardens. And early on in Busch Gardens era, they had a essentially a dwarf village, or a dwarf village, not gnomes, but today we think of them more as gnomes, but basically just a small storytale area. This is Hansel and Gretel's story in the dwarf village. And that's the hospitality house in the back from Busch Gardens. Then we have the Sky Rail again. This is kind of an invented picture. The birds and the cheetah in the front ground, those are added on, and what would have been Photoshop back in the day, pre-Photoshop. Then we have the Mckee Motor Hotel in St. Petersburg. And we have Webb's City Store, most unusual drugstore in the world, it was called. It opened in 1926 and eventually closed in 1979. It took up an entire city block, and it's actually an attraction in and of itself. It's not just a store. At some point I'll tell the story of it. Then we have, let's see, Indian Rocks Beach. That would be near Clearwater, north of St. Petersburg. Treasure Island, which is near St. Petersburg Beach, much further south from Indian Rocks. Then we have a bridge, the Gandhi Bridge, which goes across Tampa Bay. This is downtown St. Petersburg. In the distance, you can just see the $1 Million Pier, as they used to call it. An early image of the original Sunshine Skyway before they built the second span, which eventually was run into by a boat. And we have Fort DeSoto Park, which is south of St. Petersburg and right on the Gulf. Then we have a Happy Pirate, because every place around Tampa has to have happy pirates, apparently. This is from Treasure Island, yet another one of the beach communities near St. Petersburg. Indian Rocks Beach, once again. The Howard Franklin Bridge. More of Fort DeSoto. The fishing pier, and right here in the front you can actually see the ruins of Fort DeSoto. And we have golfing and sunbathing in Tampa. Another view of St. Petersburg Beach. Fort DeSoto Park, one of the nicest places to go. I really enjoy going to Fort DeSoto. Then we have Sarasota Jungle Gardens. We've moved south. This is a white peacock at Sarasota Jungle Gardens in Sarasota. And then we just have a generic Florida beach scene. Doesn't even identify which beach it is, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. Then the strip at Daytona Beach at night with the beach in the front. Generic orange groves. Daytona Beach with the pier in the background. Generic gator. Daytona Beach scenes. The main building at Rainbow Springs, which is a bit of a distance from everywhere else we've seen today. More Daytona Beach. More Daytona Beach, including the tower that most people have forgotten. A couple pelicans. Another gator. Some seashells. More Daytona. The Skyway that they had that went out to the middle of the pier. More Daytona. A look at Georgia and Florida's I-75 connection. And then a generic map of Florida, the Sunshine State. We've got yet again another photo of the Florida Sunshine Skyway Bridge. This is the original bridge. They would later on build a second span. That span would be run into, and it would be eventually taken down along with this one for the most part, although they kept parts of them for a fishing pier on both sides of the entrance to Tampa Bay. And then of course they built the new Sunshine Skyway Bridge that's still there today. So a giant postcard of Webb City, St. Petersburg. Let me put that in here. It was a very much a tourist attraction. Something like 50,000 people would visit it every day. And this is a souvenir booklet, cost somebody 25 cents back in the day, for Webb City. And you can see the size of the building at this time, and it's actually smaller. It actually expanded after this too. So, okay, I reset up for the brochures. I'm not really going to go into these in any great depth. This is Miami Wax Museum. This is probably not a brochure I have, but it could be. I definitely recognize John Glenn posing there. This was a fairly successful wax museum for quite a few years. The Thomas Edison Winter Home. These are upside down, I think. There we go. Thomas Edison Winter Home down in Fort Myers. Today it also includes the Ford estate, the Henry Ford Winter Home as well, because they were next door neighbors down there. This is a Silver Springs. I believe we can actually sort of date this one without too much difficulty. I have several copies similar to this one. I may actually even have this one. I know during the 50s and 60s, Silver Springs usually put in a fairly good map into Florida into the brochure, and it's usually dated, and this is copyright 1965. Yes, that doesn't mean that this brochure came out in 65. It could have come out a couple years later. They probably just used the same map for several years, because why not? But it's kind of a useful feature that Silver Springs did. I did an early video on Silver Springs and some of its additional attractions. I'll link that here for you to see as well. And this is Ocala in Marion County, which is where Silver Springs is located, of course. This brochure shows horse breeding, and also an image from Rainbow Springs. These brochures seem to be mostly from the mid-60s. If anything sticks out that's different than that, I'll let you know. Six Gun Territory, which is also an Ocala area brochure. I did a video on that. I probably have a copy of this brochure, but one of the things that's often different is this listing of Florida Attraction Association members that some of the brochures have. If you're a member, if they were a member of the Florida Attractions Association, they usually listed all the other attractions on one of their brochures, and you can actually see from year to year what has changed because some of the memberships will have changed. Then we have Florida's Finest Citrus, an Ormond Beach Williams Fruit and Gift Shop. This is also one of those things that I tend not to keep too much of, but I don't have this brochure, and it's kind of interesting to keep a few things around like this. They were certainly helpful when I made my orange video. Also, this one has prices on it, which is very useful. It helps date things as well, or orange things, because these aren't dates. And then we have an early Kennedy Space Center brochure. This was back when it was called Spaceport, and the NASA tours were conducted by TWA and Greyhound. They actually owned the contract for them. This gives you tour fare costs and everything like that too. You can also date things to some extent into the mid-60s or later. This has a zip code on it, which of course didn't come mandatory until the mid-60s. So if it doesn't have a zip code on it, it's probably about pre-1963. Then we have Parrot Jungle in Miami, Florida. It's one of my favorite attractions. As you can see, it's got the Florida Attractions Association member list on the back too. And I probably have this brochure, but I may have just a slightly different version of it. Then we got Mckee Jungle Gardens, and that is in Vero Beach. One of the few real attractions in that whole area of Sebastian to Vero to Fort Pierce, but it's been there forever. I believe Mckee Jungle Gardens started in about 1939 or 1940. Once again, I probably have this brochure. Stephen Foster Memorial. This is the state-sponsored memorial and park that's up near White Springs, near the Georgia border. Then we have Sunken Gardens, which I've already mentioned. This is in St. Petersburg. It's still open today, as is Stephen Foster. A lot of these places are actually still open, thankfully. This was built actually when an individual named Turner drained a lake near downtown St. Petersburg and dammed it off and basically took the basin and developed it into a botanical garden. So it's a kind of a unique place. As you can see, it advertises the one of the newest attractions, the King of Kings display that I showed you some of the wax figures from earlier. So once again, these are all coming pretty much from the same time. I don't know if this would have been somebody's from somebody's vacation at that time. It's possible somebody could have been there, but to all these places, or not necessarily to all these places, but collected these brochures in the possibility of going to these places. This is a general brochure I have seen before of St. Pete Beach and St. Petersburg. Basically just gives you an idea of what you can see in the area. Then we have the MGM's Bounty exhibit. This was the recreated ship for the MGM movie, The Bounty. and it was built and taken to Tahiti, and Marlon Brando, who starred in the movie, insisted that they didn't destroy the actual Bounty ship at the end where they burned the movie. Sorry, spoiler alert. Where they burned the ship, they burned a stand-in ship instead, because he said that this would be popular and could travel the world. And while it did travel the world and was actually at the 1964 World's Fair, it eventually made its way to St. Petersburg, and it sat in the harbor at St. Petersburg from 1965 to 1985. That's it at nighttime too. Then we have the Aquatarium, which is at St. Pete Beach, no longer there, but it was one of the more interesting oceanariums in the state. It didn't last for all that long. In fact, it ran from 1964 to 1977. I don't know if I have this brochure, but they're always interesting brochures with the pictures of the animals that they're able to get. Then we have Derby Lane, which is the St. Petersburg Kennel Club. And not much to say about that, except that was greyhound racing back in the day. Tiki Gardens, which is up in Indian Rocks Beach, south of Clearwater. This was another sort of botanical gardens. It actually was more of a gift shop that grew into an attraction to encourage people to stop and spend more time. So it was basically a Polynesian themed botanical garden. Probably not the most politically correct thing anymore, but Tiki Gardens ran from 1950 to 1990. Today it's a parking lot. And this is just a map of Florida. The reason to open it up, you probably know what Florida looks like. It says it's effective 1969, so that helps us date them. Considering that these are all pretty much within the same few years, it's pretty safe to, I can tell that they're all pretty much in the same few years. So if the ones that I see that I am not familiar with are, I can also infer that they're going to be in the 60s as well. This is the Leroy Jenkins Palace Inn. It looks like it's a pricing guide. It's in Daytona Beach, so somebody saved that. I love it when people save everything. Whether it's something I really want or not, it's fascinating to see what they hold on to. Sometimes I get ticket stubs. Sometimes I actually get receipts from things that they purchased. It's pretty funny what people will hold on to. Early American Museum. This is just a two-sided brochure. This came from, Early American Museum was a museum that was next to Silver Springs. It was part of the family of Silver Springs museums and attractions. And once again, it shows some various members of the Florida Association of Attractions. Here's another one for Rainbow Springs. That's another two-sided one. Then we have Daytona Beach Resort Area News. I believe I have this. I remember the young lady in the bright yellow bathing suit waving goodness knows what. Oh, and this has a second. Okay, so firstly, this gives you a calendar of events, which is a wonderful thing to have. And so this shows you that this was printed somewhere around the beginning of 1969. So it's so easy to date that. And then it's got a secondary part of it. The Daytona Beach Resort Area shows you the Daytona 500, Daytona International Speedway, and various other things. Andre Previn conducting the LSO in Daytona Beach. Should even be able to date that. So that gives you a lot of good ideas as to when some of these brochures were made. And then we have, looks like we have a couple copies here. The Florida Attractions Association. Yes, the Florida Attractions Association made its own brochures. I have a whole bunch of them. I don't know if I have a copy of this. Let me just quickly check to see. This looks like it's the same one, which kind of makes sense. They probably grabbed two at the same time. I do that on occasion. And this shows you a list of all the different attractions that were part of the association at that time. It then gives you a map with pictures and descriptions of all the different locations. And this one's in booklet form. Some of them fold out in map form, and this one folds out, or is stapled in a booklet. So that's good. I'll have to check to see if I have that copy. And we got another Stephen Foster. I think this is identical to the one I had before, the one that was shown before. Then we got Homosassa Spring, spring of 10,000 fish. There's probably a lot more than that in there, but who knows. This was located north of the Tampa, St. Petersburg area. And I always like the picture here. I don't know if you can see too well, but it's got a friendly squirrel that's going out and about ready to rip off the nose of this young lady. We got a brochure for Key West. It's the first one that's that far south, showing things such as the shrimp boats, old houses, the naval base that used to be in Key West, and of course the old aquarium and the contour train. And we have the Miami Seaquarium with Hugo the killer whale. This is one of the most successful of the oceanariums around the world at the time, and it's still in existence today. Hugo is no longer alive, but they have another killer whale named Lolita that's still there. And more of the listing of the Florida's finest attractions, the association. And we have next another brochure of the Florida attractions. Now, just to show you the previous two, you can tell that these are obviously different ones. This type without a map on the front is actually an earlier type, I know, from the work that I've done with them. But it's within a few years. And this one has like a fold out. It's not done in booklet form. None of these tend to be none of these are dated. I have about 18 or 19 copies of different years of the Florida Attractions Association brochures, and none of them are dated. But you can sometimes date them based on when attractions opened and closed and when they're no longer in the brochure. And you have the Key West contour trains. For many years, the contour would just print this very basic black and white, one-sided or one-sheet brochure for their tours, which I always thought was kind of a nice, simple thing to do. I have several copies of them. They change, prices change, and times change and stuff like that. So I have 5 or 6 of them. I'm sure it gives you a list of the different places that they stop and visit. It's actually one of the best tours in the state, even today. And we have Lion Country Safari. This opened in the late 60s, I think like 1967. Fun fact that it was partially sponsored by Ford Motor Company, and so all the rent-a-cars that you could buy, or all the rent-a-cars you could rent, if you went in, say you wanted to go to Lion Country Safari, but you owned a convertible or were riding a motorcycle, they would rent a car for you for your trip through there, and it would be a Ford car. The little Jeeps they had were also Broncos that they used to drive around in. Not that that really matters, but this is one of the more interesting wildlife parks in the country, and it's still operating today. The main difference today is that the Mustangs can't drive through and interact directly with the lions. Then we have Treasureland. This was a small park. It was basically an indoor attraction located near Busch Gardens in Tampa. There's not a huge amount of information about it. I've got a couple other brochures. This may be a copy of one of the ones I have. But it was an indoor location all about pirates. Cypress Gardens. This is a basic one sheet of Cypress Gardens from around the same time. It's got the Florida Attractions Association members and everything on there. You can tell that they just sort of fit them on with the smallest font size possible. Then we have Busch Gardens. Busch Gardens started in 1959. This would be well after that point. But it took quite a few years before Busch Gardens started adding real rides to the park and turned it into a full theme park with thrill rides. So this is back when they were starting to increase the number of large wildlife they had and started making a move into becoming an African-related park. That's why you've got the cheetah, and of course lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, no bears. I don't think they've ever had bears at Busch Gardens. Tom Sawyer is a Tampa boat ride. There's not a huge amount of information about it as well. It was one of those smaller things that a lot of people did, but you would only be on it for a couple hours and then move on to something else. It was essentially a recreated steamboat. And it would travel around parts of Tampa Bay, around Davis Island, and a few other places. Then we have Weeki Wachee Springs. I probably have a copy of this because I have a copy of nearly everything. They one of the interesting things is that they did for their brochures is that they would have famous people quote on how wonderful the place is. So Bob Hope here is saying, the live mermaids are the greatest of Weeki Wachee, and it's fun. Thank goodness it's fun, because you wouldn't want an attraction that wasn't fun, right? And then you got Arthur Godfrey here saying Weeki Wachee is one of the 7 modern wonders of the world. So, then we got Sarasota. Whoever took this trip didn't spend a lot of time in Sarasota. We don't have a lot of information from there, but this one shows you a grouping of Belm's Cars and Music of Yesterday, which was an antique car museum as well as an antique music box museum. And then you have the Circus Hall of Fame, which was the actual Hall of Fame of circus people. And then you had Sarasota Jungle Gardens. And this gives you all the information you need to know, all within a 1-mile radius. Then we have the actual Circus Hall of Fame brochure. This, unfortunately, is no longer in Florida. Then we have the Citrus Tower, which may be the only Central Florida brochure we have. I don't remember anything else. But remember, back in the day before Walt Disney World came, there wasn't a lot of attractions in the greater Orlando area. But the Citrus Tower over in Claremont was one of the most popular attractions because it was right on US 27. And it was also another place where you could obviously buy citrus. So this is more of a brochure to actually sell the citrus than anything else. Then we have Caribbean Gardens down in Naples. Today that is the location of the Naples Zoo, which officially is called the Naples Zoo at Caribbean Gardens. This was before it turned into much of a zoo, and so it was a botanical garden with a lot of birds and stuff. This is where the Duck Vaudeville show was. It was popular. It actually, Duck Vaudeville made it onto the Ed Sullivan Show. And then interestingly, we have the last one, the two of them together. This is Jungle Larry Safari at Caribbean Gardens. And this actually shows you the transition between Caribbean Gardens, which was essentially a botanical garden that you could go and walk around and you see some birds and things like that, but mostly just plants, to a point where Jungle Larry, who was a animal trainer and owned a significant number of wild animals, he worked on a contract with Caribbean Gardens and helped transform Caribbean Gardens into Jungle Larry's Safari at Caribbean Gardens, which was the actual start of the Naples Zoo. It's actually a pretty good haul. I think there's a lot of things in here that I'll be able to keep. Hopefully learn a little bit more about stuff. I think that the Web City information is really going to be helpful for a future video. Alright, I readjusted the camera one more time because there's one more thing I want to show you. It's a little too big to fit in the screen easily. As you can tell, it's a large, well, medium-sized box. Let's open this up and see what's in it. I know what's in it, but I think it'll be kind of an interesting thing. Let's see here. This is something, I have a large number of these already because I'm kind of a fan of them and I like to rescue them. But this is the first time I have found these type of cypress knees in basically a bookend form. Let's see if I can move them in a little bit. Here we go. So let's turn them on the side. You can see the cypress knees. They've been shaved down a bit to make them flatter, which is not really the most wonderful thing in the world to do, but hey, they've already been chopped off. The interesting thing is they're also a great deal heavier than the regular ones that I have. Usually cypress knees are very light wood. These have been weighted down. I don't want to take off the felt because it's in good condition, but I have a feeling there's like a lead weight or something inside them. So I think that's kind of fascinating. These are like basically all the cypress knees that I collect from the Tom's Gaskin Cypress Knee Museum that was down in Palmdale, Florida. But like I said, this is really the first time that I've seen these as bookends. Not sure how to show that too well, other than the fact that obviously they are more or less flat and sit next to each other and they're weighted. At some point I'll put books in between them and get a picture of them for you to see as well. So anyway, that's it for my unboxing. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I'm surprised if you've actually watched it because I don't know if it's any good at all. Let me know in the comments if you liked it. And remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more about Florida tourism history. Stingray Tom's Florida, traveling through time around the Sunshine State.